we find in Pasuk Chof, Hashem comes to Bilam and he says to him, Likro luchabo anoshim kun lech itom. Ach esadov shadabe elecho susase. If the people are coming to call you to come with them, you should go with them. However, you only have a right to do what I instruct you to do. Vayokom Bilam baboker v'yafush esasono. Bilam rose in the morning and he hitched his donkey, and he went with the officers of Moab. So Rashi over here, Chofala explains, why is Torah telling us that he hitched his own donkey? Why is that important for us to know? Say he rose early and he went with them. But Torah gives us every detail. He rose and he hitched his own donkey. Why is that piece of information important? Mikan sha'asinim mekalkel zashuro, shechovash hu ba'atzmo. Bilam, as we saw just from the narrative until this point, he felt that initially the reason why he said that God doesn't allow him to go with them is because he's not sufficiently acknowledging who he is. I mean, Bilam himself, because as it says in Pirkei Avos, it was rucho gvoa. He was pompous. He had an inflated ego. As much as you wanted, it was never sufficient. And yet, a man who's so self-consumed with the perception of who he is, the man goes and hitches his own donkey. It's contrary to his whole persona. So why is he hitching his own donkey? That's what the Torah is pointing out, because it goes to reveal to what degree he hated the Jewish people. Sha'asina b'kalkel zashura. That intense hate disrupts protocol. Shechovishu ba'atzmo. Let's stop for a moment. So that he hitched his donkey is an indication that the man at that moment was not thinking rationally, so to say. He was totally consumed with that hate, and therefore, as we'll explain in a moment, the issue of him hitching the donkey is not a problem. Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rosha, Kodesh Baruch Hu said to him, evil one, Kfar Kodmoch Avram, the forefather of the Jewish people, he already preceded you in hitching his own donkey. Shenemar v'yashkim Avram baboker v'yafush es chamoro. He rose early and he hitched his own donkey. Avram also, not because chas v'sholom he was pompous, but he was an older man. He was 137 years old, time of the Kedah. He was a man who was proclaimed to be the Prince of God. He had endless wealth. He could have had somebody else hitch his donkey, but he personally rose early to hitch his own donkey. So what is that an expression of? An overwhelming level of love also overrides protocol or disrupts protocol. What is it all about? So we explained that a person, just to give you the indication, regarding, we once mentioned the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, regarding the building of the Mishkan, we find there were two types of people who contributed to building the Mishkan. There was Asher Nodva Libo, Asher Neso Libo. Not sure if you remember the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. So he explains that when the Torah speaks about Asher Neso Libo, the person who was inspired by his heart to participate in the building of Mishkan, the Torah classifies this person as Ish Asher Neso Libo. Ish is always a word which shows distinction. People of distinction who are inspired by their hearts. When it speaks about the person who gave due to the generosity of his heart, the word Ish is not mentioned. Neso Libo is Ish. That's distinction. The person who gave due to the generosity of his heart doesn't say Ish. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh over there explains, a person who's generous, he gives due to the generosity of his heart. To what point does he give? He gives as much as he feels he can give. up to the point where he's not personally compromised. But once it reaches a point where it's a question, he may be financially compromised, he's not giving beyond that point. That's the Hashem Dovel Libo, Shen Nodvel Libo. The soul Libo is a person who's inspired with the objective. That person doesn't think about himself. All that matters is the objective, and that person gives beyond his means, because when he gives, what touches him is the objective has to be addressed, and he doesn't think about himself. All he thinks about is the objective, and that has to be addressed, and that has to be accomplished. Therefore, that person, even though he may have less wealth, he gives as if he's a very wealthy man. He gives beyond his means, because he has no relevance, because at that moment, because of the importance of the objective, it's like he doesn't exist at that moment. Nodvel Libo is a person, he exists. I'm happy to help. I value it. I'll do as much as I can. The one who's inspired, it's not he'll do as much as he can, because there's no I will do. All that matters is it has to be done. So a person who, let's say, does something out of love. I love a person and I want to satisfy his need. That's all that matters. Or his request or his desire. You don't think about yourself. But it's, I want to help you. And if I could, I will. So there's the me, I want to help you. I will help you as much as I can. The example I always give, a person has a friend, he needs help, and he helps him exceptionally, on an exceptional level. So the friend says, maybe you can do a little more. He says, he just can't do more. And he has his own child, has the same need, and the father helps his son more. You just finished saying that you can't do more, go beyond this. So why, when it comes to your child, why could you do more? The answer is because since there's a level of love a parent has for a child, he wants to help the child. That's what matters. The third, his friend, close friend, he will not go beyond that, because he says, I can't do more. Why for the child could he do more? The answer is because at that moment, he doesn't think about what it costs him. What he thinks about is the need of the child, that he has to address the child's problem. So if Avram Avinu, although he was 137, he could have had one of his slaves or servants hitch his donkey, but because of his love for Hashem, all that mattered at that moment, it had to be done. I want to do the will of God, even though it meant bring his own child as a sacrifice. Didn't make a difference. At that moment, all that existed was the will of Hashem. Avram, being 137, being the Prince of God, being this phenomenally wealthy person, at that moment, it did not resonate. It did not even come into the equation. Bilam was a pompous megalomaniac. Whatever you want to say was, it's me, it's I, it's only that. But when it came to cursing the Jews, there was one objective. You have to wipe them off the face of the earth. Whatever it takes. At that moment, he was so consumed with his hate, all that existed at that moment was the destruction of the Jewish people. As a result of that, he hitched his own donkey. So hitching his own donkey, it reveals to us, at that point, he was subsumed by the hate. Therefore, at that moment, he did not exist. So each in his own context, it's attributed either to an overwhelming level of love or this overwhelming level of hate to the point it totally consumes him. That's how we explained it. And we said earlier, the Rashi cited it, when Balak commissioned Bilam, he says, you should drive them out of the land. He did not want them to be destroyed. Just keep them away from us. When Hashem came to Bilam and he says, what are you doing here? Who are these people? He says, well, I was commissioned to drive them off the face of the earth, not to drive them out of the land, to destroy them, drive them out of existence. So from there, Rashi pointed out, in the name of the Midrash, we see that Bilam's hate for the Jewish people, although he was not the person who was threatened, was greater than the concern of Balak.